Welcome back. So tomorrow morning, the Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, will call the National Assembly to order, swear in the new MPs, and then, after conducting the election for a Speaker and Deputy Speaker, presumably tomorrow afternoon, conduct the election for a President. It's one of those moments when the judiciary is involved with the legislature. The Constitution obliges the Chief Justice, says that he must play this role. Lawson Naidoo is the Executive Secretary of the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution. Lawson, good afternoon to you. So we have a constitutional democracy, a democracy where people vote, but we also have the rule of law and we have the Constitution. Is that what we will see tomorrow? All of that working together?
Indeed, and added to that is the issue of the separation of powers, because we will have the Chief Justice as the head of the judiciary, we will have a Speaker elected as the head of the legislative arm of the state, and we will see a President elected as the head of the executive arm of the state. So it's a coming together of the three arms of the state in a very, very important process that will unfold in the National Assembly, which, as we know, will now sit at the Cape Town International Convention Centre.
So it's one of those moments where we don't have a parliament at the moment. I mean, we don't have MPs. So someone needs to sort of start things off. And, I mean, we're not different from many other places. It's often a judge that does this. In our case, it's the Chief Justice who starts things off. Someone has to start things off, and I'm not allowed.
Indeed. And who more appropriate to do it than the head of the judiciary, an esteemed member of representative of the state at the highest level, who is independent and impartial through his office, and who presides over this first sitting of the National Assembly to swear in those members of the National Assembly so that they can begin to perform their functions thereafter. And those functions that follow immediately thereafter is to elect from amongst their peers a Speaker, a Deputy Speaker, and in our democracy, the President is elected and is accountable to the National Assembly.
When a person takes the oath to be a member of Parliament, I presume they also swear to uphold the Constitution and the law, to obey the law. How important is that oath?
Well, it ought to be, front and center of the minds of those 400 members that are going to, either swear allegiance to that oath or to make a solemn declaration of support to that oath of office. And as we know, the Constitutional Court has told us in a number of judgments, but no less than in the so-called secret ballot case, that that oath of office really ought to guide members of Parliament in exercising their functions within that institution to do what is best in the interests of the people of South Africa, who have put them there as our elected representatives, and to do all that is in the best interest of the country as a whole. So we really hope that in the 7th Parliament, that solemn oath or affirmation is top of mind for all of our recently elected members as they begin their 5-year term of work tomorrow.
We're going to have an election for the position of Speaker of the National Assembly as well, and it's a key role. And at this stage, Lawson, and I don't think I've ever been in this position just before this sitting before, but I have no idea who that person will be, who will be nominated. And I actually, for the first time, have no idea which party they're coming from. How important is that role?
Well, it's an incredibly important role, particularly in an institution like Parliament, which by its very nature is a multi-party forum for the expression of the views of 60 million South Africans, that are represented by 400 people in that plenary session. And the Speaker plays a critical role. He or she is the head of the institution, lays the groundwork, enforces the rules, and seeks, for Parliament to operate in a manner that produces legislation, exercises oversight of the executive, exercises oversight of budgets to ensure that the interests of the people are always put first. But having said all of that, Stephen, the overriding thing for me is that the Speaker needs to have the confidence of all 400 of those members, all of the political parties represented in the National Assembly, to be able to allow Parliament to function effectively, for people to have respect for the authority of the Speaker, of the Speaker's office, and of the role that that person plays in our democracy.
There are a lot of new precedents in our politics at the moment. First time a governing party, the ANC, has fallen below 50%. First time we may, well, sort of the second time we may have a government of national unity. I don't even know if we're going to have that at this point. Probably the first time that we might see members of one party voting for the leader of another party to be president. I mean, there are all sorts of different things happening, and you'll remember Frini Jinwala well. She was our first speaker. How did she try and set out the role and set precedents in the role of Speaker of the National Assembly?
Well, you know, it was a clean slate, as it were, when Frini Jinwala became Speaker back in 1994. I was fortunate to have worked alongside her in that process. And one of the things, the first things that she did, it was obviously a lot easier then than it might be now, Stephen. In that 1994 Parliament, we only had 7 political parties. But one of the things that she made sure happened was that every single one of those parties, regardless of how small they were, would have a front bench seat in the National Assembly. She felt that that was critically important, because when people saw the National Assembly in action on their television screens at home, they wanted to see that the people that they had put there were being treated equally to everyone else. So, you know, that's an important part of the role of the Speaker, is to ensure that all of those 400 voices in Parliament are heard, and they are able to express the will of the people that have voted for them to be there.
The other thing is that up until this point, we've always had a speaker from the ANC. And in fact, at one point, it was the chair of the ANC, Baleka Mbete, who was the National Assembly Speaker. Do you think, and I don't know if this will happen, but if it does happen, if we get a speaker from another party, while the ANC is still the dominant or leading party in the National Assembly, do you think it'll change the, I don't know, the atmosphere? Let me just use the word I want to use. Will it change the vibe, Lawson, in the National Assembly, do you think?
Well, it probably will, Stephen. I think we'll have to wait and see whether that materializes and how it plays out. But, you know, it ought to be something that isn't an issue. I mean, in the first few parliaments in South Africa, you know, even beyond the Government of National Unity in 1996, amongst what is called the Presidium of Presiding Officers, which includes the House Chair and the Chair of Committees and the other leading figures in the political leadership of Parliament. In those early years, there was always people from opposition parties represented there. And I think personally that it was a very important message to send out, that this is not a majority party dominant institution, that it is an institution that respects that there are many different views and parties that are represented here. And so if we do have a speaker, elect a speaker tomorrow that is not from the biggest party, but from one of the other smaller parties, I think it would be a step forward for this institution. And I think it's going to play, this institution for me has the opportunity to play an incredibly important role in the next 5 years, much more so than it has done perhaps in the last 10 or more years, where Parliament has really not exercised its teeth, not exerted oversight over the executive. It's been a product of having a dominant party and an executive-minded majority party in Parliament. That political dynamic is clearly going to have to change now, and I think we'll see hopefully much more robust and meaningful debate about policy, about legislation in the National Assembly that will drive an agenda that affects the real change that I think the voters have expressed in this recent election.
Lawson, Naidoo, thank you, Executive Secretary of the Council for the Advancement of the Constitution. Really do appreciate the time.